Saturday morning, and the doorbell hammered like a woodpecker on steroids. I was halfway into my first mug of Folgers, still in the faded navy robe my wife bought me 20 years ago, when the voice floated through the screen door. Unidentified male on the premises. Step away from the vehicle. I peered out. Dorothy Ellis, president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, stood on my driveway in a lime green tracksuit, clipboard raised like a riot shield. Beside her, my old army buddy Frank stood frozen with a box of Krispy Kreme, looking as dangerous as a golden retriever. Dorothy had spotted him pulling in without the mandatory guest pass sticker. In her world, that made him public enemy number one. "Ma'am, that's Frank," I called. "He's here for the game." She ignored me and dialed 911 right there on the asphalt. "Yes, operator, possible trespasser. 6 foot, baseball cap, carrying a suspicious white box." Frank lifted the lid. Glazed donuts gleamed in the sun. The dispatcher must have rolled her eyes so hard the call dropped to speaker. Dorothy repeated herself louder, adding that the suspect appeared, wired for communication. The Bluetooth in Frank's ear was apparently a dead giveaway. 2 HOA volunteers jogged up in matching polo shirts, walkie-talkies crackling. I was about to invite everyone inside for coffee when Frank reached into his pocket and flipped open a leather wallet. Gold Shield. Detective Francis Malone, Metro PD, off-duty. The silence that followed was the kind you feel in your chest. Dorothy's face cycled through crimson, magenta, and finally chalk white. "Detective," she whispered, as if the word tasted bad. Frank smiled the same easy grin he used on perps. "Ma'am, filing a false 911 report is a misdemeanor. I'd hate to ruin your weekend." Dorothy's clipboard trembled. She muttered something about community vigilance and retreated, volunteers trailing like scolded puppies. Frank handed me the donuts. "Your HOA lady needs a hobby." I figured that was the end of it. I was wrong. Monday morning, a yellow envelope waited in the mailbox, stamped urgent in red. Inside, a 3-page citation for permitting unauthorized law enforcement presence without pre-approval. Dorothy claimed the badge had induced widespread anxiety. She attached grainy photos of Frank's cruiser and a petition signed by 3 neighbors who swore they now feared for their hydrangeas. Frank got his own letter. Dorothy had filed an online report at 2:17 a.m., accusing him of impersonating an officer. Internal Affairs called him before breakfast. They were laughing too hard to finish the coffee. Tuesday noon, 3 unmarked sedans rolled into Willow Creek. Dorothy bolted from her house in curlers, phone already recording. "See? I told you they were casing the neighborhood." The officers walked past my porch and straight to her door. Frank was among them, badge now clipped to his belt. He handed her a thick envelope. "Cease and desist, Mrs. Ellis. Multiple frivolous complaints against a peace officer." Dorothy sputtered. "I'm protecting property values." Frank nodded toward the donut box on her porch railing, left there by a sympathetic neighbor. "Start with the pastries, ma'am. Less paperwork." The street filled with onlookers. Someone's lawn chair became front row seating. Dorothy threatened lawsuits, harassment, the Supreme Court. The sergeant issued a formal warning for 911 abuse and suggested she find a bridge club. That should have closed the book. Instead, Dorothy scheduled an emergency HOA meeting for Thursday and plastered flyers on every mailbox. Protect our community from outside threats. Agenda Item 1. Suspend my membership for endangering resident safety. The clubhouse was packed. Folding chairs scraped linoleum. Dorothy took the dais beneath a banner that read "Preserve the Sanctity of Willow Creek." Her glitter-covered gavel, yes, glitter, slammed down. "We face an unprecedented breach," she began. "Mr. Hargrove has introduced armed personnel without disclosure." A retiree in the back coughed, "Donuts." Laughter rippled. Dorothy pointed a manicured finger at me. "I move immediate suspension." Frank stood, calm as Sunday brunch. "Before the vote, the board should see the evidence, Mrs. Ellis submitted." He connected a tablet to the projector. Dorothy's own Ring camera filled the screen. Her screaming into the phone, Frank holding the donut box like a peace offering, the 911 call playing in split screen. The room held. Dorothy lunged for the remote. Frank continued. "Add the impersonation complaint, the 911 transcript, and the official warning." Section 4C of your bylaws allows removal of any officer who files fraudulent claims against a resident or public servant. Vice President Evelyn Grant, who had endured Dorothy's reign for a decade, rose slowly. I second the motion to vacate the presidency. Hand shot up. The vote was unanimous, 112-0. Dorothy abstained by hyperventilating. Evelyn collected the glitter gavel and slid a banker's box across the table. Your files, Dorothy. Security will walk you out. Dorothy tripped over her purse strap on the way to the door, muttering about rigged elections and deep state pastries. The next week she resigned to focus on family. The new board repealed the guest pass rule, the exterior paint palette, and the ban on basketball hoops. Frank still drops by for games. Nobody asks for his sticker. Some nights I sit on the porch with a beer and watch the streetlights flicker on. Dorothy power walks past in neon sneakers, eyes fixed on the sidewalk. She hasn't filed a single complaint since Internal Affairs scheduled her interview. I never wanted drama. I just wanted to watch football with an old friend and a box of donuts. Turns out that was enough to topple a tiny empire. What about you? Have you ever watched a neighborhood bully get humbled or been on the receiving end of petty rules? Drop your story below, especially if it involves injustice wearing a clipboard. Tell me where you stand. Are HOAs a necessary evil or a breeding ground for tyranny? Let's hear it.